You're in a conversation and someone is smiling at you, telling you everything is fine, but you already know it isn't. You can feel it in the slight pause before they answer, in the way their eyes didn't quite match their mouth, in the almost invisible tension in their shoulders that they think no one noticed. You noticed. You always notice. And here's what nobody ever talks about: the moment after you notice. That split second where you make a choice. Do you say something? Or do you do what you always do? Absorb it, file it away, and carry the weight of knowing something you were never supposed to know. Most people live inside conversations. You live around them, watching the subtext, reading the room before anyone else has even settled into their seat. And for a long time, you probably thought this was just how everyone thinks. It isn't. My name is Philex, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't choose this topic because I read about it in a textbook. I chose it because I've spent most of my life being the person in the room who noticed everything and said nothing. The one who could tell you exactly what was happening beneath the surface of a conversation, but couldn't explain why that ability never made me feel closer to people. Only more alone in a very specific, very quiet way. If you've ever felt like you're watching your own life through a window, present, but somehow always slightly outside of it, then this video was made for you. Stick around. And if at any point you feel like someone finally said the thing out loud that you've been carrying in silence, subscribe. Because there's more where this came from, and you shouldn't have to keep figuring this out by yourself. Let's be honest about what we're really talking about. There's a certain kind of person who walks into a room and immediately, without trying, starts processing everything. Body language, the social dynamics, who's avoiding who, what's unsaid, what's being performed. It happens automatically, like a background program always running, and they can't turn it off even when they desperately want to. Society has a few ways of describing this person. Highly intuitive, empathic, perceptive, sometimes even gifted. But here's what society almost never says. This often isn't a gift you were born with. It's a skill you build because you had to. And that changes everything. Because there's a massive difference between someone who reads people because they're curious and someone who learned to read people because, at some point in their life, it was the difference between feeling safe and not feeling safe at all. The thing is, most people who see through everything don't think of themselves as survivors. They think of themselves as overthinkers, as burdens, as the person who ruins the vibe by seeing what no one else wanted to see. But the truth is more complicated than that. Here's what most people don't understand about hyperperceptiveness. It doesn't develop in stable, predictable environments. It develops in unpredictable ones. Think about it. When a child grows up in a home where the emotional temperature could change without warning, where a parent's mood was a storm system they had to track daily, that child learns to become a forecaster. They study micro-expressions. They listen for the tone underneath the words. They get very, very good at knowing when something is coming before it arrives. Not because they're special, because they're adaptive. Think of it this way. A child who grows up near a calm lake doesn't need to know how to read weather patterns. But a child who grows up near an unpredictable ocean, they learn to read the sky. They learn what a certain color of cloud means. They learn which shifts in wind matter and which don't. They become extraordinary at something that other people never needed to develop. That radar doesn't disappear when the ocean calms down. It stays. And so these people move through the world with a nervous system that is always scanning, always processing, always, on some level, looking for what's real beneath what's presented, because they learned, early, that what's presented isn't always what's true. Here's something nobody really explains to you. That constant feeling that you're always noticing things, the shift in someone's voice, the silence after a sentence, the smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes, it didn't come from nowhere. It wasn't random. It wasn't just a personality trait. It was built, quietly, slowly, usually long before you have the language to understand what was happening. Psychologists might call hypervigilance a nervous system trained to stay alert for signs of threat. But that word sounds too clean, too clinical. It doesn't capture what it feels like to live inside it. So let me show you what it feels like. Imagine a child sitting at the dinner table. Nothing dramatic is happening. No one is shouting. The plates are on the table. The lights are warm. From the outside, It looks like an ordinary evening, but the child feels something shift. A pause that lasts half a second too long. A parent's jaw tightening. A chair being pulled back a little too sharply. A sentence spoken in a tone that sounds normal to everyone else, but not to them. And suddenly, their body knows before their mind does. Their stomachs tighten. Their voice gets smaller. They start moving more carefully. They choose slower or faster. They become very quiet. Because somewhere deep inside, they've learned that the room can change without warning. And if they can read the change early enough, maybe they can survive it better. That child isn't trying to be dramatic. They aren't trying to overthink. They are learning. They are learning that safety sometimes depends on noticing what no one says out loud. They are learning that a mood can be weather. That silence can be a warning. That love can become unpredictable. And that the safest thing to do is to pay attention before anyone tells them to. This is how the radar begins. Not as a gift, as protection. But the problem is, once your nervous system learns to scan for danger, it doesn't automatically stop when the danger is gone. It follows you. Into friendships, into relationships, into work meetings, into quiet rooms where nothing bad is happening. You can be sitting across from someone who genuinely loves you and still feel your mind searching for the crack in the sentence. The hidden meaning, the thing behind the thing. Not because you want to, because your body remembers a time when missing the signal felt unsafe. And this is where it gets complicated. Because the same part of you that learned to detect danger also became the part of you that understands people deeply. The part that notices when someone is pretending to be okay. The part that hears pain underneath sarcasm. The part that can walk into a room and feel the emotional temperature before anyone has said a word. That is why this ability can feel so confusing. Because it is both beautiful and exhausting. It helps you understand people, but it also keeps you slightly outside of them. It makes you emotionally intelligent. But sometimes I am emotionally tired. It gives you clarity, but it can steal your peace. The gift and the wound are not two separate things. They grew from the same place. And maybe that's why it's so hard to explain. Because you don't want to stop seeing clearly. You just want to stop feeling responsible for everything you see. You don't want to become less aware. You just want to know what it feels like to rest. To sit in a room and not scan it. To hear someone say, "I'm fine," and not feel your whole body preparing for the truth underneath it. To trust a smile without needing to investigate it. To be present without standing guard inside your own mind. And maybe healing doesn't mean losing your perception. Maybe healing means learning that not every silence is a warning. Not every pause is rejection. Not every change in tone is danger. And not every room needs you to become the radar again. Maybe real work isn't to stop seeing through everything. Maybe the real work is to finally ask yourself, am I seeing what is happening now, or am I seeing what I once had to survive? Let me give you some images that might feel uncomfortable. You're at a dinner party. Everyone else is having a good time, laughing, telling stories. And you are too, on the surface. But underneath, you're also tracking the fact that two people across the table haven't made eye contact in 20 minutes. That your host's laugh is slightly too loud. That someone just made a joke that landed wrong, and the person it was aimed at smiled, but their hands went still. Nobody else caught any of that. You could not catch it. Or someone sends you a text that says, "I'm fine." And you know, with absolute certainty, that they are not fine. Not because of the words. Because of the period at the end. Because they usually use emoji. Because the reply came 4 hours late, and they're never 4 hours late. You know. And now you must decide whether to say something or pretend you didn't notice. Or maybe the most exhausting one. You're in a conversation with someone who's performing happiness. And you can see through it completely. You can see the weight behind their eyes. The effort in their smile. And you sit there, holding the knowledge of their pain that they haven't even admitted to themselves yet, trying to figure out how to be present without making them feel exposed. This is not what having good intuition feels like in self-help books. This is what it feels like. It's not always graceful. It's often lonely. And it comes with a very specific kind of tiredness that's almost impossible to explain to people who don't experience it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but isn't this just useful? Isn't seeing through things a good thing? Sometimes. Yes. But here's what most people don't want to look at directly. When you're wired to see through surfaces, you can also start to see through everything, including things that deserve to be taken at face value. You can become so skilled at finding the subtext that you start inventing it. You can look at someone who genuinely loves you, who genuinely means what they say, and still finds yourself waiting for the part where it isn't true. Because your nervous system doesn't fully trust fine. It doesn't fully trust, I mean it. It has been trained by experience to look beneath the surface, and it will do so even when the surface is exactly what it appears to be. This is when perceptiveness stops being a tool and starts being a cage. This is when the person who sees through everything also becomes the person who struggles to receive anything, love, reassurance, straightforward kindness, without filtering it through a layer of doubt. And let's be very honest, there's a version of this that becomes its own kind of armor. Seeing through people before they can disappoint you. Knowing the ending before the story plays out. Staying one step ahead of pain by anticipating it constantly. It feels like intelligence. It feels like control. But it's also a way of keeping yourself at a very safe, very exhausting distance from your own life. Here's what I want you to sit with. The most dangerous thing about seeing through everything isn't that you're wrong. It's that you're often right, and that being right has become the primary way you feel safe. Because if you can see it coming, it can't blindside you. If you can read the room, you can prepare. If you can detect the shift in someone's energy before they've said a word, you can protect yourself. You've built an entire architecture of safety around the act of knowing. And somewhere in all of that knowing, you may have stopped letting yourself be surprised. Stopped letting yourself be moved. Stopped leaving room for people to be better than your first read of them. It's just what trust feels like when you've spent so long without it. You don't have to become someone who sees less. You just must learn that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is choose not to look. I want to leave you with something real. There will be people in your life who will never understand what it costs to be this aware. They will call it overthinking. They will tell you to relax. They will say you're reading too much into things. They will wonder why you can't just enjoy the moment. Just trust people. Just be present. As if presence were simple for a nervous system that once had to stay awake just to feel safe. But maybe they don't understand because they never had to learn what you learned. They never had to study in the room before entering it. They never had to read a parent's face like a weather report. They never had to become quiet just to keep the peace. They never had to know what was coming before it came. So no, you are not broken. You are not too sensitive. You are not too intense. You are not difficult to love because you notice too much. You are someone who learned to read the storm because, at one point in your life, the storm was real. And maybe that ability protected you. Maybe it helped you survive. Maybe it made you wise before you were ready. But here is the part that matters now. Survival skills are still allowed to rest. You don't have to keep scanning every room to prove you are safe. You don't have to keep predicting every disappointment to protect your heart. You don't have to keep seeing the ending before the story has even had a chance to begin. Because maybe your gift was never the problem. Maybe the problem was that no one ever taught you how to rest from it. So the next time you feel the radar turn on, the next time your body starts searching for the hidden meaning, the shift, the warning sign, pause for a second. Not to shame yourself, not to silence yourself, but to ask gently, is this my intuition? Or is this my old survival system trying to protect me from a past that is no longer happening? Because sometimes healing is not about seeing less. Sometimes healing is about realizing you are finally safe enough not to look so hard. You can still be perceptive. You can still be deep. You can still be the person who notices what others miss. But you don't have to carry every unspoken thing like it belongs to you. You don't have to turn every room into a puzzle. You don't have to make every silence your responsibility. You are allowed to be here. Not analyzing. Not preparing. Not waiting for the storm. Just here. Breathing. Living. Letting the moment be simple. Even if simplicity still feels unfamiliar. You spent so much of your life staring at the sky, trying to predict the next storm. But maybe, for the first time, the storm has passed. And maybe the bravest thing you can do now is walking back inside. If this video put words to something you've carried quietly for years, leave a comment. Not just great video. Tell me something true. Tell me what you've always noticed that no one else seemed to see. Tell me what your radar learned to protect you from. I read every comment. And if you want to keep going deeper into the parts of yourself you were never taught how to explain, subscribe. Not just for more videos, for the conversation. Because you've been trying to understand all of this alone for long enough.